Welcome to Khanversations. I'm Muqtedar Khan, your host. And today I'm going to talk to you about breaking news that's coming out of the Middle East. It appears that Israel and Hamas have agreed to a ceasefire finally. And this ceasefire is going to be announced very shortly. A lot of information has already been leaked to the press about what the conditions of the ceasefire are. And I'm going to reflect upon some of the details that are now available to us. And I will also reflect on what happens next. So before I start talking to you about this incredibly wonderful news, please subscribe to Khanversations, like this video, press the bell icon, and don't forget to share this video with your socio-political network. So the news is that finally Hamas and Israel have agreed upon a three-stage process. And so the first stage, the details have been agreed upon. And so the first stage is about ceasefire. So please understand that this is not the end of all the troubles in Gaza. What it really says is that the peace process, if we may call it that, has broken into three stages. The first stage is about ceasefire. The second stage is about ending the war. And the third stage is about what happens in Gaza after the end of the war. So the details of the first phase have been agreed upon. These discussions were in Doha. Israel and Hamas were being mediated by Egypt, Qatar, and the United States. And of course, already the team of President-elect Donald Trump was heavily engaged. And there's a lot of discussion going on social media, especially on X, that it was Witkoff is coming, his envoy, the Middle East envoy, coming in, not yet in place, played an instrumental role in pressuring Bibi Netanyahu to accept the conditions and go ahead. We will know about that much later, but let's discuss what the two parties have agreed upon. So what is going to happen now is that Hamas is going to release 33 or 34 hostages. Most of them are going to be women, children, and people above the age of 50. It is reported that Hamas still has about 94 hostages. Some Israeli soldiers are also part of the hostages that Israelis hold. Israelis believe that Hamas has about 60 hostages, and some of them, of the 94, some may have already died. So we don't really know as to the total number of hostages available. But in the first phase, 34 or 33 hostages will be released, mostly women, children, and older. And in exchange for them, apparently for every woman that is being released, women hostage, Israel is going to release about 50 Palestinians who have been held, detained. Among those who have been detained for militancy, they are going to probably be sent abroad to some other country, but the others are all going to be sent to Gaza. So maybe 1,000 or more Palestinians are going to be released from prison. But what is more important is that hundreds of thousands of Palestinians who were forced to evacuate northern Gaza will now be able to go back to their homes in northern Gaza. Israel has agreed to move its troops back, but not entirely out of Gaza. It is going to maintain two buffer zones, one near the Rafah crossing, or basically the border between Egypt and Gaza. Israel is going to control that border and remain inside Gaza to create a sort of a buffer zone, and the same in the north. There are still some finer details to be negotiated as to how much of Gaza's territory Israel is going to control. First, Hamas said 0, then they agreed to 350 meters. Apparently, the number that is being thrown around is 800 meters to 1 kilometer. So the Israelis will control a buffer near the Egypt and Gaza border for about 1 kilometer. And it's not yet clear how much of a buffer zone Israel will create with regards to northern Gaza, that is to keep Hamas fighters out in the future and make it more difficult for them to shoot rockets, etc., I guess, to create a kind of a buffer between the southern Israel and northern Gaza. But the biggest and the most important agreement is that huge amounts of humanitarian aid will now be allowed into Gaza. Until now, Israel was preventing aid from coming into Gaza, but now it's going to allow. So basically, countries are coming forward, and hopefully a large amount of humanitarian aid, medicines, food, water, blankets, still winter, will go to Gaza. There are lots of problems with that. See, in the past, there were about 3 reasons why there was problem with humanitarian aid. One, Israel had basically blocked most of it. So it was not allowing, it was just allowing a trickle down amount of aid to go in, but was not really allowing aid to go in the amount it was necessary. Number two, Israel had also demonized a lot of UN agencies, and so they had to pull out of Gaza. So now the question was, who is going to really distribute the aid that is coming in? And finally, it's about security. The Israeli army is not going to be in Gaza and is not going to provide security for the aid that is coming in. Is Hamas capable of providing security? Is Hamas going to distribute it as it should be distributed? Those are the logistical and mechanical questions of distribution of aid. But the good news is that a large amount of humanitarian aid will come. So the hostages will be released in bunches of 3 and 4 over a period of 72 hours. And then there is a period of 16 days after which the discussion about the second phase will start. So the first phase is about ceasefire. The second phase, the discussion will be about how to end the war. What will happen? Will Israel completely withdraw, etc.? So the end of war termination negotiation will start after 16 days. And that is very tricky. There are already attempts in Israel to go to courts and block this ceasefire. Israel's right-wing partners are very angry. But Israel probably, Netanyahu will probably be able to push this through the parliament because he can bank on votes from the opposition party also for this particular measure. But the third phase is going to be the trickiest one as to what happens in Gaza after withdrawal of Israel. Who is going to govern Gaza? So there are various alternatives. One idea that was thrown around was that perhaps the United Arab Emirates will put troops on the ground, and some kind of a coalition by UAE, Saudi Arabia, and Egypt will provide some kind of interim governance in Gaza. The other alternative is to bring in the Palestinian Authority from West Bank to govern Gaza, or bring Gaza under the governance of Palestinian Authority. I don't think the Palestinian Authority has done a great job in West Bank for it to, I don't have confidence in PA to be able to deliver in Gaza. But the other thing that has happened is that, which has been a source of worry for Israel and the rest of the community there, is that even as Israel has been killing Hamas, Hamas has been recruiting more and more young people, are angry with what has happened to them. They are very upset with the genocidal violence in Gaza. They have seen the destruction of everything in Gaza. All buildings are destroyed, nearly 70%. They say there are no schools standing, universities, hospitals, civil society institutions. There's absolutely nothing left. The whole region has been devastated by Israel's indiscriminate bombing, not to mention close to 50,000 people dead that we know of. Once the debris is cleared, there are estimates that perhaps the death toll will be over 100,000. So there are lots and lots of people angry, and so it's just no trouble for Hamas to recruit that, even though there is some anger against Hamas in Gaza for bringing this misery to them. So because Hamas is able to recruit, yes, it lost its leaders, Hania and Shinwar, but there will be others who will take the leadership role. So Hamas will probably return to full strength very quickly, I think, after the ceasefire and during the second phase. So removing Hamas itself will be a challenge. If the Arab armies or forces come into Gaza to secure, they will probably have to fight with Hamas. How are they going to govern and exclude Hamas from taking over Gaza? This is the question. Will the Israeli army come back into Gaza and fight Hamas? And then we are back to square A. So this is going to be very, very tricky. And I don't think that the Palestinian Authority can govern Gaza, especially with Hamas returning to full strength and not being included in some governance mechanism. I propose, and I think the best way to deal with this scenario would be to have an election in the third phase. to have a free and open election in West Bank and Gaza and let the people of Gaza decide who will govern them. I suspect that a segment of the people in Gaza must have suffered so much. Some of them have lost all their relatives in one day. Imagine losing 50 relatives on the same day. So they are very much in grief, obviously in shock, but also very angry. And it is quite possible that Hamas might not win the elections in Gaza. But having a fair and free elections in Palestine, we haven't had one in more than 15 years. The last time, 2007, 2008. So having a free and fair elections in the third phase will probably be the best way to go forward. But until then, the critical aspect is that the first stage goes peacefully. I hope there are no opportunities given to Netanyahu to break this ceasefire. The only hope, I can't believe I'm saying this, is that Donald Trump will be president from Monday onwards, and there will be some constraints on Netanyahu to restart the war once the ceasefire has been declared and Donald Trump takes credit for it. So unlike in the case of Biden and Blinken, who are basically bootlickers of Netanyahu, I think Trump will, while he will allow Israel a lot of latitude, he will also want to make sure that Israel does not do anything that he himself doesn't want. So in that case, I think that the ceasefire might hold on, at least in the first phase, and then the difficult negotiations for the second phase for the end of the war will begin. But let's start talking about the third phase also, what happens in Gaza after the end of the war. So anyway, I hope that this brief discussion of what is happening with the ceasefire, you found it useful. So please subscribe to Khanversations, like this video, press the bell icon, and don't forget to share this with your social political network. And we will continue to drop as more information becomes available and more details come out. This is a major global event. It's going to have a huge impact on US foreign policy in the Middle East going forward. So I will continue to keep an eye on it and speak about it frequently. So please keep coming back to Khanversations. Definitely subscribe to the channel and press the bell icon so that you get notifications when I post new videos. So until next time, take care. I'm your host, Muqtedar Khan.